The next panel is titled The Path Towards Carbon Neutrality and Carbon Farming. What type of farming in Europe by 2050? We're going to listen to a video message from one of our guests. The video message is from Paolo De Castro, who is a member of the Commission for Agriculture Development. Let's hear what he has to say. Good morning. I can't be with you today, but I wanted to extend my greetings to President Gattoni and everyone who's there today at this very interesting conference on biogas. Biogas is a great opportunity, an opportunity in our country, but also an opportunity for Europe that is committing in carbon farming to try to push agriculture towards carbon neutrality, which is a sign of the greater concern for the fight against climate change. Renewables, biogas can contribute considerably, creating new markets and giving room to European and Italian farms. That's why it is important to give more and more value to what enterprises can do, trying to focus on what farming can give. This is a new vision. So I invite you to focus on what Europe could do, what Italy could do based on the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. It is a very important commitment that Europe is going to support. So I wish you all the best for today and hope to see you soon. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Honorable De Castro. From the European Parliament and from the Commission, we've got Salvatore De Meo here with us. Good morning, welcome. We have sanitized, of course, the chairs and the microphones. And Angelo Frascarelli is also with us, he's Mayor President. Or maybe he's not here yet. Maybe he's going to join us in a minute. And Diana Lenzi, President of the Young Farmers Association. And Luc Vermeil from Farm Europe is also here. Good afternoon and welcome. The head of cabinet of the European Commissioner is also connected. Maciej Golubieski has been following us by video conference. Good afternoon. Of course, we will speak in Italian. And there's interpreting, of course, for our foreign guests that will speak in English. We've got President of Vermeil as well, Angelo Frascarelli. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you. So this morning and in the early afternoon, we have heard that the Farming for Future platform can also be interpreted from the farm-to-fork perspective. It's one of the instruments that could help us in this regard. Let's start from Mr. De Meo. Well, farmers are not only food producers, but they play a key role in the green transition. Through the practices, the technology that is currently available, they can contribute to the fight against climate change. Well, first of all, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. Well, I believe that this opportunity is a great opportunity for farmers because we have stressed that farmers can play an active role in this famous ambition that wasn't born yesterday. For decades, Europe has given guidelines. I guess we are the first continent in the world to set out ambitious goals to counter climate change. And farmers are fully on board. There are many representatives of the farming world here. Farmers, for a long time, were considered as the culprits, as the people responsible for climate change, whereas it is quite the opposite. In the common agricultural policy and in the two most important strategies promoted in Europe, the strategy on biodiversity and the farm to fork, the instruments to completely change this wrong perception are available. I'm very glad that Stefano Vaccari reinforced this point. We are amongst the ones that have made huge steps forward, and we can be a benchmark in Europe and in the world. We can be a point of reference. We have a regulatory framework that as a whole provides great opportunities. We must be able to take these opportunities at a local level. We must know how to rise up of another important challenge, a challenge that Italians have to face. You know that our sector is very fragmented. There are many family-run farms. We have to overcome some stereotypes. We heard about skills earlier. Well, one of the big difficulties that we are facing today when it comes to the use of resources is skills. For example, where we weren't able to use up all European resources, not because we didn't have the ability to do so, but because we didn't have the skills to intercept the resources that could provide Italian farming with an added value, so give a new momentum to farming activities. In the farm to fork, there's a vision devoted to carbon farming. It's a new methodology whereby farmers can be placed at the forefront in the fight against climate change. Of course, we have a negative delta when it comes to CO2 emissions, and I think that there's need to cut down CO2 emissions, but we must not be afraid, because even one of the latest measures, Fit for 55, is creating some friction, some tensions in the European debate, because evidently every strategy needs an impact assessment phase. I don't recall if it was Vaccari or someone else who talked about sustainability for businesses. Well, we have to make sure that these challenging challenges don't become something negative for businesses and for farms. But let's say that the starting points are very good and very promising for everyone in Europe and for farmers, because the common agricultural policy is taking up almost 1/3 of the European budget. So resources have been further increased with the Next Generation EU, more than €9 billion to guarantee this green transition. There are many opportunities that our farmers must take, and our farmers must be supported in taking them. We've got a panel of international players here that can definitely help in this cultural paradigm shift. But we are way more ahead with respect to other countries. Thank you, and I'm very pleased to hear what you said. That reinforces what we heard this morning about the availability of resources. Europe is investing a lot in this sector. And after this summer, Italy is not ranking last in any field, especially in sports, let's say. We won it all. So we are a superpower now. Well, joking aside, I'm saying this to introduce our next guest, Luc Vermeil. So my question is, maybe we have come to a point where biogas, bioenergy have found a point of balance. Well, the reliability and the validity of biogas from an environmental standpoint has been unanimously recognized. So integration between food production and energy production is actually possible, isn't it? Shouldn't we support it more to support sustainability? Excuse me for the play up on words. Is that so, Mr. Vermeil?
much. I will speak in English. First, I want to jump at what Mr. De Meo said. Every time I come here, and thank you, Piero Gattoni, for the invitation, I really feel that you are in advance in comparison with many, many places in Europe and in comparison with the debate which is taking place at the moment in Brussels. Because we have the feeling that actually we are at the end of the process because the CAP was just approved and so on, but actually in Brussels we are at the beginning. And the vision of agriculture, it's really now that we will have to define it. It's in the next 2 years. And what we saw around the farm to fork debate and the time the Commission took to put on the table the impact assessment show us the challenge we have in front of us. Because clearly, for the moment, if we take bluntly the objective the Commission is putting on the table, we have a degrowth strategy. And it's not only us now as Farm Europe, we are saying it. We did some impact assessment a few months ago, but now the Kiel University is saying it, the GRC is saying it. Many, many others are saying more, the USDA is saying it. So many others are converging towards the same conclusions as we did a few months ago. So now, taking into account these conclusions, and I will come to your question, to that. We need to change the tracks and to really build a common vision of the future of agriculture. It's not via degrowth that we will manage to achieve our goal. Climate ambitions, biodiversity, all these challenge the farmers, the farming community, agree with those challenges and has solutions. And now is the moment that in Brussels we need to listen to that and to come to the solution, and to solutions that put together economy and environment. And the core is indeed innovation, as I heard before, but also investment. And we need an investment. And I don't want to be too long, but I want to add that I do not agree with the vision which is sometimes spread in Brussels that the farm to fork will rebalance production across Europe, and at the end of the day some will succeed and will win out of it and others will pay the bill. If the farming community is not on board as Europeans, everybody will lose. It will be a lose-lose for everybody. So we need to make sure all across Europe that there is a shared vision of the future of agriculture. And indeed, when we take that, the carbon farming, biogas, double cropping, precision farmings, all these tools are available. And we are today in the think tank assessing all the solutions that can be mobilized. And if we put all this together, not in 10, 20 years, today we can reduce by 30% greenhouse gas emission from the agricultural sector. So what we need now is to scale up solutions. And this goes via investment and prepare solutions for tomorrow. This is innovation.
Ok, grazie davvero. Luc Vermeil.
Thank you very much, Luc Vermeil, because you push us to work all together. So the time is now. It's not in 10 or 20 years' time. It is now that we need to work together, and we need to share this vision at the European level. So there cannot be, of course, borders or barriers. If there has to be innovative farming, agriculture, it has to involve the whole of Europe as a whole. So I will get back to you, Mr. Vermeer. Thank you for your words. Now, Angelo Frascarelli, President of ISMEA, you are also a great expert, an economist who is an expert in the agri-food sector. You deal with figures every day, but not limited to that. And here, somehow, it's easy to say, well, let us implement ecological practices, but it's more difficult to actually measure these practices, their adoption, implementation, and some effects of what we are imagining to apply today are going to be felt in years to come, many years to come, in fact. So what can we do to keep all these things together? Well, this topic is complex indeed, but we will address it. So we have to consider an aspect, which is that farming is the only sector, agriculture is the only sector that absorbs carbon dioxide. We must not forget that. And the fact that it It does through photosynthesis, but also because we have the chance of absorbing it in the soil, so carbon farming. These aspects are so important because let us not forget what is the goal. It's climate neutrality. Neutrality doesn't mean that we're not going to have greenhouse effects produced, but between those that we emit and those that we capture, we reach neutrality. And with the Green Deal, this will be reached in 2050 if we are lucky and if we implement the right policies according to the European Union. It doesn't mean that tomorrow we're going to, ride horses or bicycle only. We will continue to travel with aeroplane and we will continue to have transportation. There will no longer be fuel oil or petrol, but we will continue to use means of transport. This is the case for the whole of the economy. Of course, between what we produce negatively and what we capture, we have to be neutral. So agriculture, in this sense, has a special role to play, and I would say that in the future, in my opinion, the CAP will serve the purpose of paying for this. This CAP that gives a contribution per hectare is good, of course, but it will evolve even more towards a CAP that pays the farmer in order for its contribution to carbon sequestration, to the point that the European Union in Farm to Fork speaks about a new green business. So let us get to the question you asked me. So how do we measure that? Well, in this sense, there are many colleagues of mine who are really working on this, because we know that there are some practices that increase carbon absorption in the soil, and I will list them. The conversion of land to pasture, forestry, crop rotation, the management of animal waste, the use of ratio in animal husbandry. I will not list them all because there are too many. Pasture-based grazing, choosing the best breeds. So there are many practices that promote the absorption of carbon or that reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. So how do we measure that? Many of my colleagues are working on this, and the most effective solution would be, I have a piece of land, I implement something for 5 years, I sample this land now and in 5 years' time, and I see the difference, look at the difference. Of course, this is the most effective manner, but then it is very expensive as a system, because we can only do things, repay, let's say, the farmer ex post, but this is not possible because farmers have to be remunerated every year, rewarded every year. So there are other systems such as modeling. There are some colleagues who are working on modeling. So if I implement certain practices, there is a model that tells me how implementing these practices will lead to a reduction in CO2 emissions or absorption. I don't want to get into the details because we would need a seminar just devoted to these practices or these solutions, but we have considered this issue. And the answer is not perfect, of course, but we are working and we're getting closer to answering our needs, but we will get to measure carbon sequestration in the soil. Thank you. This is important because it's also an economic issue. Yes, as Mr. Vermeil was saying, this is the foundation, the basis to then release, issue certificates. Yes, and then also discuss these things at an economic level. Then, since the 10 actions of farming for future that we heard about this morning do focus very much on innovation, and some of these practices were also mentioned by Mr. Frascarelli, I would like to now go to President Lenzi, President of Young European Farmers. So 10 measures, those of Farming for Future, can promote or will promote innovation, and we cannot but draw a parallel between the concept of innovation and that of young farmers and young people who enter this sector as entrepreneurs or researchers, scientists, farmers precisely. Yes, well, I have to say that yesterday when I was looking at the 10 points, I smiled because I had already been through them in a secret preview. And they are in line with the 7 points that we have set ourselves to build what we consider as a concrete roadmap towards sustainability in farming led by young people in a very concrete and pragmatic manner. And in every step along this road, or in this roadmap, in every single step, there will be the world of innovation, technology, politics, policy making, and finance, because innovation, research can give us solutions. They can look at our needs, at the challenges, at what we think is important in terms of implementing and increasing that efficiency, effectiveness that can grant sustainability, because this is a real challenge. We have to make agriculture much more efficient. We have to find solutions within, thanks to what research brings to us from without. But no technology can be economically, financially sustainable if young people cannot access it. So I don't want, this technology to be just like a Ferrari car model that my child looks at every year, but it's too expensive for me to buy. And that is why we want to involve the Commission and the world of politics, AGI, in order to ask them to help young people find the financial instrument that will allow them to develop these innovative ideas. In the Session Forum, there are many young people, there are people who are very well prepared. There are different needs that still, though, are European level needs. So the CAP was a cornerstone that made Europe, the Europe of today, what it is today after the Second World War. Since then, we also grew as a power, economic and political power. This is something we need to respect at a very difficult time when the CAP will have the chance to be to represent a source of attraction at the national level, and we hope we can actually recognize national level needs. But it will be important to maintain unity and that fabric that makes us Europe. For young persons, this is a great challenge, of course, and for Europe, it is also a great challenge. Only 11% of European farms is headed by a young person below the age of 40. It means that there is a huge gap before us. There is a huge potential. There is a way of narrating agriculture which is totally different. So the farming of today is not the agriculture of yesterday. You don't spend the whole day on your tractor. You could manage your tractor if the digital technologies allow us to do so from anywhere in the world, and data can allow us to be more sustainable in using products. We can have a better ability to access the market, which is totally innovative. We have an added value that is granted by our products, and I would like this added value also to be seen on the process. If we speak about a more sustainable process, that is also something that adds some value to the final product. So there are so many things that really make farming at the moment a sector which is really attractive. But if it's always so difficult to manage generational change, because there are no policies that promote generational change in agriculture, if there are no policies that actually promote funding for young people have 90% more opportunities of seeing their loan at the bank rejected. Why? Because we have no collateral, we have nothing. We have our nice smiles, our energy, our strength, innovative ideas, but this is what the reality is. And very often we are still at that stage where even knowledge should be promoted much more. The digital, precision agriculture, eco schemes, carbon farming seen as an opportunity, but also taught today at the young people who now go to agriculture school, also in order to be able to interpret data and the huge amount of information that we today have. This is something that can promote the sector, but we need this at the national level and at the EU level. We need policies that make this possible. Thank you, President, for your words, and so through you we really want to share or to convey to the young farmers our intention of supporting them. So since you were referring to the world of politics and policy making at the European level, I will give the floor to the head of cabinet of the Mr. Golubiewski, European Commission for Agriculture. Can you tell us, please, what are the actions that are you putting in place for agriculture, and what, in your opinion, are the difficulties, the greater difficulties that separate us from the objective of carbon neutrality, and what can you tell in terms of the needs of the young European farmers?
I hope you can hear me well. Thank you for the invitation. It's a very timely event. I just came back a few days ago from Florence, where I was with the commissioner at the G20 ministerial, the conclusion of the Italian presidency. So the commissioner came from the trip, and then during the trip was in high praises for Italy and its approach to the ambitious new agenda that was presented in the new reformed CAP, but also in the Farm to Fork. So when I was listening to my predecessors, and it's good to see President Lenzi, whom I also had the chance to meet in Florence. It's good to hear that Italy is way ahead of the curve, and you're well placed. What is the Commission doing in this particular area, which is the need to institute carbon removals as an important element of reducing GHG greenhouse gas emissions and reach the target set by 2050 of 55% reduction? The farming sector and agriculture really, I believe, can play, and I think Professor Frascarelli was right in saying that it's well placed in really playing a large role in improving the situation. There is a need for increasing carbon removals in general. The land, agriculture and forestry can provide carbon sink that is needed to balance out emissions. The ambitions are quite high, you know them very well. We are moving, we need to create and increase the so-called sink to minus 310 million tons of CO2 in 2030. It's a lot. At the same time, it will allow for some residual emissions in agriculture, which will stay with us. What is the Commission doing? Obviously, we have the Circular Economy Action Plan, we have the Farm to Fork, we have the so-called Carbon Farming Initiative. All these initiatives are kind of funneling into the CAP, into the new CAP. And here you have to be aware, and you know very well, that the CAP regulation is very much vested in ensuring that there is a way to create a carbon farming scheme, but it is always a work in progress. In December 2020, we sent recommendations to member states on their CAP national strategic plans, listing carbon farming one of the most important areas they can focus on. And right now we are working with member states to develop the so-called farm sustainability tool, which, as Professor Frascarelli said, we need to have tools to measure properly the removals. We need to have ways to account for farmers' efforts that they are working on removals on their farms. There is also work on certification. Now, Italy was in the forefront of all those efforts because I think with some other countries like Estonia and Spain, we were part of the original pilot project on this. So you are, again, well ahead of the curve. Now we have another 5 member states, Belgium, Bulgaria, Greece, Romania, Slovakia, which is also completing the pilot project. Those pilot projects and the study that we are carrying out under this farm sustainability tool should improve our knowledge and give the necessary tools to farmers and policymakers to understand how we can best promote carbon removals, carbon sequestration on the level of the farm. And here the role of biogas, obviously, and biomethane is very important. We know that apart from certain techniques to reduce emissions or create sinks, there is also a very useful way, a bioeconomy approach that will promote the use of production of biogas and biomethane that will limit the GHG emissions, that would put the agricultural residues and waste products into good use, not allow them to emit CO2. So this really this type of biomass, because when we talk about biomass, oftentimes we mean forests, but there is also all sorts of waste byproducts on the farm, and these are the ones that go into the production of biomethane, biogas. I'm very glad to see that Italy is in the forefront with some other member states and Germany in those types of investments on the farm. We are very much supportive of it, and in the CAP national strategic plans, we hope to see also an emphasis on this, also in the context of the resilience and recovery plans, but also under the CAP. So the new Common Agricultural Policy is very much supportive and will allow Italy and other member states to really develop those suitable schemes for best practices, and we are very much in a supportive mode. And as soon as this study and various pilot projects come to fruition, we will have a better handle on how practically get that carbon farming, which sounds very abstract to many, how to get this really going. But you have full support from us, and we'll be able to work together, I'm sure, in the context of implementing the CAP national strategic plans also in a way to promote biogas and biomethane production in Italy. Thank you.
Grazie davvero al capo.
Thank you to the head of cabinet of the Commissioner, the European Commission for Agriculture, Mr. Golowiecki. So we have full support concerning these initiatives. I'm coming back to the speakers for a second round of opinions, also in connection to what we have been discussing, Mr. De Meo. So in 2 weeks' time in Milano, there's going to be the pre-COP meeting. There will be COP26 in Glasgow, where we will have to discuss again the issue of cutting emissions, but we cannot also consider an approach such as that of farming for future that will allow us to precisely reduce emissions in a sustainable manner. Well, yes, of course, this also the head of cabinet shared with us positive ideas about the future, and Italy can also play a reference role within the National Strategic Plan, implementing the CAP, which represents something new compared with previous programming cycles, because it begins this pathway aimed at promoting through eco schemes all those who adopt technologies that go in the direction of the Green Deal, and they have the obligation of allocating 25% of the resources to that. And within the plan, there also has to be what Italy is going to do concerning carbon farming. So these 10 practices that have been illustrated to Crea and Ismea must be translated into practical actions. I was saying this before. A personal concern I have is that there is this cultural resistance. So the things that we speak about and that to us may not really be referred to the future but the present time, when we share these things with those who practically have to implement them, things change. The president of the Young European Farmers Association said so. As institutions, we have to make sure that resources for young people have to be given to young people precisely to promote generational change, but our narrative has to change completely. For years we spoke about Europe, and within Europe about the different sectors. So farmers were seen as the evil ones, but today, also after the pandemic, we have come to realize that farming, agriculture, is probably the only sector that showed its resilience because it never stopped during the pandemic. And it has also shown that it can really be a driver for the economy and also for all social dynamics that cannot be not considered. And in this sense, we have a goal which consists in becoming active partners. And Mr. Mayor President was saying so, and I share what he says. So there's a positive element in agriculture, in the sense that soil is already a carbon sink. We have to use it in a better way, and that is why we have to consider Agriculture 4.0, the projects that we have heard about. All these things have to be implemented. You are as responsible as we are, of course, because you have to lead this cultural change, which is going to involve us. But to answer the question, well, yes, all this is possible, so we must not be afraid. Thank you, Mr. De Meo. Green possible, and is a question, and your answer is yes. I'm going back to Vermeil. The short question was just mentioned. In this field, in this new farming, there can be the meaning of the new Europe that is reborn after the pandemic. Is that so?
Yes, totally. I sign below your statement. And this give me, I wanted to share with you, and I don't know if the head of cabinet of Mr. Wojciechowski is still with us, but I think this create a new challenge for the farming community, because indeed we spoke a lot about the CAP, the strategic plans, and I know that a lot of energy is put there to do that. But in the next 2 years, there will be between 48 and 55, nearly 60 regulations that will have a direct impact on the agricultural and the farming community. And we can develop a good vision within the strategic plans, and the strategic plans can incentivize a lot of things. But the markets, most of the markets will be done elsewhere in other regulations. I take one example. The Commission presented in July, mid-July, the Fit for 55 package. In this package, there are major pieces of legislations where the biomass and the capacity of the biomass to contribute to the decarbonization of our energy sector, transport sector, household sector is simply not recognized. So if you incentivize and you have a vision in the CAP on one side, but no market on the other side, you can invest, but indeed the driver will be the market created. So I think, and that's why, as a support of the agricultural commissioner, the Comagri in the parliament will be key, because now it will be important for the institution close to the agricultural sector to bring these visions elsewhere. Not only in the commission in the parliament, for example, but also in the industry, in the ENVI committee, in the Climate committee. Everywhere, we will need to shape and to build a coherent vision.
Grazie davvero.
Thank you very much. We need to reconstruct collective and common visions. So, Mr. Frascarelli, you are optimistic in this sense. How do you answer the green possible question? Can we hope in a common vision of a Europe that starts from agriculture, which is such an innovative sector that is so active? This morning we were saying that in a sense we may also venture to be optimistic as pioneers and innovators normally are.
Non dobbiamo.
We must not hide that in Italy there are more people that are opposing the farm to fork strategy than those who are in favor of it. Well, unfortunately, I found some opponents also amongst my colleagues, so university professors. Some said that this strategy is going to lead us to famine, to reduce production, to increase imports. And some research studies have been published that are very pessimistic in this regard. So we must not say that everything is good, everything is fine, that we all agree. It is not the case. What am I going to answer to my colleagues, fellow farmers who are concerned? Well, we must attain a goal which is unavoidable. We have to go in that direction, a green transition, carbon neutrality. Well, if we think of today's farming and we project this into the future, with the goals we have set today, well, we would inevitably say we have to cut production, we have to deal with debt problems or procurement problems, but we must not adopt this approach. We must think of the many innovations that will be introduced starting from today that will help us keep production at the suitable levels. We are not saying that there are no problems whatsoever. There is a sort of opposition and resistance to the European strategy, more in Italy than other countries, but because it wasn't explained clearly. We're not going to have gasoline, we're not going to have petrol, we're not going to have diesel, but we're not going on horseback. That's what I mean. We won't have simoxylin, I don't know if it's still being used, to eradicate a vine fungus, but I'm not saying we are not fighting against these pests. We are going to use alternative methods. We have to say these things very clearly. Otherwise, these goals, these objectives are going to be seen from farmers and from ordinary citizens as a mirage, something impossible to attain. And this will make them lose interest. Whereas we have to mobilize all the available technology, and innovation is going to help us in this regard. Innovation that is already here. You all know that gas oil is not going to exist any longer, but we will still travel by car or by plane. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, President Lenzi, we have been talking about policies, we've been talking about an impact that will happen especially on your members, on future generations. So I assume that has to be you is going to come to terms with what is going to happen in the future. Well, hopefully. Well, we start from the assumption that right now there are agricultural policies that talk about farmers and agriculture, but most of the times farmers are not actively participating in the debate. So the starting point should be that when talking about farming, farmers are invited to prudence and resilience. I always fight against those who consider the farm-to-fork strategy as a way to destroy our production system. I don't agree. We will have to continue producing food for 9-10 billion people. That's a commitment towards our territory, towards our rural areas. It is a commitment towards what we, our parents, have done. This is our heritage. Full stop. So the future has to be planned. The future has to be built. So policies are needed for this. Policies are needed to create the enabling environment where we can actually achieve the targets that we have set, because amongst our members, at least, there's no one saying, well, there's no such a thing as a climate change. Lots of people have cried tears of despair in Germany, in Poland, and Italy. Climate change is here. Extreme weather events are here, and they have an impact on our daily activities. We want to progress day by day because we want to build companies that are profitable, that are economically viable, and that are sustainable, that allow us to be sustainable also from a social standpoint for the areas for which we create economy. So we are part of a production sector, we are part of an industry, and as young people, we want to see this sector grow. We want to see consistency because there are many policies that right now are not consistent, whereas they should all find a way to be harmonized and to go all in the same direction if this is the direction we all agree on. And it is equally important to create opportunities to access this industry, to help people stay in agriculture. There's no point in having one-off measures. I want young people to be encouraged to contribute to create the agriculture of tomorrow, and for those who are going to be farmers in 20 years' time. Thank you very much, Diana Lenzi, President of the Youth Farmers Organization. I don't know if the head of cabinet is still with us, so thank you. So we have a final question for you. That's a question we asked to begin this event. Well, in Italy, there's lots of innovation in the agri-food sector. It is the country of agri-food excellence. We've been hearing a lot about nutrition, about production. Think about the expo in Milan. It was 6 years ago. And the main topic was to feed the planet with 8-10 billion people without destroying the planet itself. So from our beautiful Italy, first of all, our warmest farewell. But answer this question. Do you say yes or no to the question, green possible? Is it green possible?
Is what possible?
Is it the green possible? Green possible. If the green transition is possible. If the energy transition is possible.
Look, it is possible, but I think certain conditions have to be fulfilled. First of all, referring to some of the questions that were asked right after my presentation in terms of feasibility and some of the contradictions that some see in some of EU policies, we cannot be alone in this transition. If the European Union is alone and if does not create what we call green alliances and global approaches to those challenges, well, then it might not be possible. I mean, we are just a part of the ecosystem. So EU cannot act alone. That's why it's the external dimension of farm to fork is very important. The second thing is if we want to increase production, if you want to increase efficiency in the context of maintaining our commitment to the let's say reduction of emissions, we also need to put, and it was rightly noticed, more emphasis on technology development, on various innovative agronomic techniques, and also on working to ensure that quality based production does not necessarily mean less efficient. That means also better connection between local suppliers and retailers, shortening supply chains, making going to the market cheaper, eliminating the price premium that transport puts in the price for food products and things like that. So working also across the supply chain, and this is the ambition of Farm to Fork, is also a cost-cutting, in some sense, initiative, if we do it right. So I think it is possible. Definitely, we can definitely go to green future, but these are connected vessels. We need to be working with our partners and across value chains to achieve that. And of course, the cap here will be supportive, and this is all the costs that are often talked about. You know, the eco schemes were mentioned here, the direct payments to those farmers who will engage in carbon farming will be given to them. We will put money behind those efforts, which should also cushion some of the initial effects of moving to a more sustainable and greener agriculture.
Grazie davvero.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Golubieski. And with this, we're going to conclude this panel. I would like to thank once again all our guests, Luc Vermeil, the president of the Youth Farmers Association, Lenzi, Salvatore De Meo, and all the other participants. Thank you. An applause for them.